So glad to see everybody here. We are definitely in the summer slump, and there's a couple of bad days on Sundays. The day after Easter is a low day, and for some reason Father's Day is a low day, and summer is a summer slump. So I don't know why Mother's Day is like one of the busier days for the church, but not Father's Day. So just something about the song we sang, the third song. It's a very good song, well written. It reminds us, there's a lot of emotions in that song. It reminds us to come to God with a broken heart, with the need. But then remember that God has an abundance of grace for us. And He's always there. Sometimes we think that He's not there. Sometimes we think that God's turning His back, but God's right there with you. Christ lives in us, and there's an abundance of grace. Let's get into today's message. I'm so excited to just come back and preach, and having 1 week off, I haven't had that last week, so I'm so excited. Today I'm going to try something different. I'm going to be throwing a bunch of stuff in the message, and if you stay with it to the end, I promise at the very end I'll connect the dots, and you're like, so that's what he's talking about. So stay with me. Normally I would just kind of walk you through and give you sights as we have a journey along, but today I'm going to kind of throw a couple of things in. So a couple of U-turns, and then we'll turn back, and at the very end, you'll see kind of the destination. 特别的话，主要耶稣基督不只给路给担忧，还给他人这个。Amen. So life is all about choices. And when you get up in the morning, you have to decide what to wear. Sometimes for us, it's a lot of choices. For women, especially my wife, it's definitely a lot of choices. And then you go downstairs, and you have to decide what to eat for breakfast. That's another choice. But in our lives, we like choices. It is when there are too many choices, we will get confused. We start to doubt. And maybe we get overwhelmed with choices. There's this restaurant on University Avenue. And I think it's a Thai restaurant. That's what the name says. But then when you get in there, it feels like a Hmong restaurant, and maybe it's a Vietnamese restaurant. Because when you look at the menu, they have like over 50 items on the menu. Food from all nations. And it feels like, when I get there, I'm like, how can they keep all of that menu in the back kitchen for those that have done restaurants? It'd be challenging. But I go there just for the simple food. Hmong sticky rice, lak, and papaya salad. Something simple, but good. When making choices, we sometimes think that maybe I made the wrong choice. I should have gone with the other choice. Maybe I was overwhelmed. Let's take a look at today's message text this morning. We're going to be reading from Galatians for the next 2 weeks, this week and next week. And each time that Paul writes his letter, the first thing he talks about is God. Who is God? And then he talks about us, what we are doing, what Christ did. And then he goes, how should we respond to God? How should we live? In our text today, Paul writes to the church in Galatia, to the Galatians, and he's helping them sort out how they should live to the law, to the 10 Commandments, now that they know Jesus Christ. So let's read our text together. I'll read it in Hmong, and you can read it in English behind me. Galatians 5:13 to 18. จากที่ขอคือว่า主到使咩家了，都要你使過咩麼嘅要拼，但是咩去啥麼做嘅要拼的，我咩做好嘅冇我嘅撇嘅噶，沒有就是路下一度走下下把一度，就好話主做嘅在我做嘅在從我不能麼受讓。如果应该还打没有主路没得个地这种一样的没路接，但是也没有了 tê cha mê chi mê ít tu do ít tu ha ít tu ô lì hạ cho ít tu do mê ô lên đỡ mê ít tu yên yếu ô cho ít tu trâu kế bộ chua cô khá cho mê lên nó mê yếu chủ cha văn chủ bì cả mê lưu nênh mê chỉ so cha mê lưu xa cả mê ít ra lên cho họ tôn hình lưu xa yên chỉ nhà tê cứ văn chủ chủ bì nhà hà văn chủ bì yên chỉ nhà tê cứ tôn hình lưu xa nhà tôn hình lưu xa hà văn chủ bì yên ô yên yếu dòng văn chủ bì cho mê kế chế chủ kế chạy yên chỉ mua phu chỉ cả mê lợ and then now you have to so many decisions we have to make. There's a movie that says choose wisely. Yeah. Choose to be under the old law or choose to be under a new law. So what is this new law? What is this new law? What is this live in freedom? And did you know that once you are a Christian, you have to make decisions? Now that you are a Christian, you already believe, you have faith. What do you do now? So we're clear. I'm not talking about you or me being a believer. We're already a believer. We're a Christian. We have faith. This is why you and I, we're here this morning, because we are a believer. So I want to be distinct between having faith and doing what's next after you have faith. This morning we're going to be talking about what do you do. So you know when you have too many choices, when there is so many things that you have to decide on, you get overwhelmed with information. Sometimes it leads to losing motivation. You get disengaged. Maybe there are distractions. For example, back to that restaurant where you're trying to select something, you're trying to flip into the pages, 50 things on the menu. You're just going to pick whatever looks good because you're hungry. You want your food. There are other times where we lose motivation. For example, when everything around us or those around us are negative, we sometimes might get negative ourselves. We get into these small arguments, and we don't encourage each other. Sometimes we are always at each other's throats. We look at what people do, their work, what they say, the way they act, the things they do. It's like we're constantly nagging each other and saying terrible things about one another. Have you ever been in these situations before? You know what I'm talking about. It is sometimes just around us. Maybe we get into a circle of people, and it becomes, what's the word I'm looking for? It becomes toxic. Yeah, you lose motivation to be nice to people. You lose motivation to love people. So where is the love? What happened to the love? What happened to looking for the good in people? And when did we stop looking for the good and just looking at the faults of others? The question this morning is this how Christians should behave? What do you think? These past 3 weeks has been hectic for me. I've been, you guys know I've been going back to California, and I've done that for 3 weeks, but it felt like I've been gone for 3 months. 1 week felt like a whole month. Just the other day, I was telling myself, I've lost motivation to learn. I can't take it anymore. There is so much information in my head. I was kidding to the kid the other day. There's so much Bible in my head. I can't take it because there's all this information I have, reading, the books, the writings, the sayings. At one point, I'd about had it. I lost motivation to learn. Sometimes when you have too much going on, sometimes when there's too much negativity around you, or like in my case, there's too much learning, you lose motivation at whatever you are doing. And this is the same for love. When you don't have love and just negativity, you lose motivation to love. And if it continues for a long time, you might forget how to love. There's no more love in you. It is drained. You've lost the motivation to love. When we try to be a Christian, we try to live our lives following the law and all the rules we're familiar with. But when I talk about the law, I'm talking about the 10 Commandments, right? And all these other rules also. But we will fail. And we will fail at it miserably. Because these laws and other rules that we see in the Bible are just too much to keep. And it becomes overwhelming for us. We lose motivation. Because we feel like we are held under the law and these rules all the time to be a Christian. And we start to say, these commandments from the Bible are just too much to keep. There are so many rules and choices. I'm overwhelmed. And I sometimes feel like a walking stick because I can't do anything or I can't do everything. At least that's what we tell ourselves. But you lose motivation. Maybe to be a Christian altogether. Let's talk about what is a good Christian. Does following all the rules in the Bible make us a good Christian? That's the question. And when I say follow, you really, really work hard at it because you beat yourself up each time you miss one rule that you keep to yourself. And you think that when you can't keep one or some or all of the rules, you're not being a good Christian. Or you are not a Christian at all. Is that what you think? Or is that what you hear? Or is that what you've learned? Or is that what someone has told you? That when you can't keep one of these rules or a few rules, you're not a Christian. But isn't there a verse that says, we all fall short of the glory of God? Yeah. Paul said that in Romans 3. Jesus, before he left, he gave us a new commandment. Let me read it for us. John 13:34, it says, so now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other just as I have loved you. You should love each other. Jesus said this at the Last Supper. He said it to his disciples. He said, I'm giving you a new commandment. So what did Jesus mean by this new commandment? Well, you have the 10 Commandments from the Old Testament way before Jesus. The one that you and I, we all know we can't keep. Because if we fail one, we fail all of them. But we do have our favorites, right? Honor your father, your mother. Thou shalt not murder. Maybe we can keep those, right? But when we fail one, we fail all of them. That's what Paul's talking about. We all fall short of the glory of God. And so when Jesus came, he came to fulfill the law. He died and is risen for us. He did it so that our faults, our wrongdoings are forgiven, so that you and I, if we believe in Jesus, we become a Christian. We get to go to heaven. Yeah. Jesus came to fulfill the 10 Commandments. Because we all know we can't do them all and follow some of these rules. Jesus also knew. And that's why he gave us just 2 commandments. 2 commandments. Do you want to know what they are? He reduced 10 commandments down to 2 commandments. Love God, love others. That's so simple. Jesus took the other 9 and made it into one. Love others. In our text today, verse 13 says this. Let me read it again for us. For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters, but don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love, for the whole law can be summed up with this one command: love your neighbors as yourself. So you and I, we've been called to live in this freedom. We've been called to be believers. We've been called to be Christians. We have this freedom from the old law, but we have a new law. Love others. Just so we're clear, we're not talking about you and me being a believer. We're not talking about our faith. We're all here this morning and online listening because we have faith and we already believe. It's about now what? Love others. Love God, love others. Now what? Romans 13 says this. Clothe yourself with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh. Now what? Yes, put on the Jesus jersey, Team Jesus. Clothe yourself with Jesus. This way, you won't be so worried about the 10 Commandments. You won't be so worried about all these choices on Christian rules. This way, you won't be so worried about being overwhelmed. And when you let the Holy Spirit lead your lives, you and I, we won't be doing the same old things. We won't lose motivation to love. Because our text this morning says that the Spirit gives us desires opposite of what our heart and our mind wants to do, which is sometimes bad for us. Now what? We talked about it a few weeks ago. L-I-F-E, life. Live it fully every day. Live a Christian life fully every day. Love others fully every day. And love those near you. And sometimes that near you means a lot more than just your family and your friends. These are people that God put near you. That's what that means, near you. Sometimes it could be the person in front of you at the grocery line where you're checking out, and the two of you are talking together. God put that person next to you, near you. Also, be a good Christian to that person by showing them love. So what is a good Christian? We talked about Christian. Now, what is a good Christian? Love God, love others. Now what? This is your faith walk. People wonder, what is my faith walk? It is love. It is loving others just as Christ loved you. This is the new commandment from Jesus to us. It is that simple. Well, not everything is that simple, but we can start there. Start here. Start here by loving others. Start here with your faith walk. Because you and I know that most of us try too hard to be a Christian. We hear others tell and say that we need to work harder to be a Christian. We need to earn our salvation. And see if this sounds familiar to you. Oh, you haven't been a good Christian, so I'm not sure if you're going to go to heaven. And when you start to hear things like this, it makes you think more. It makes you want to do more. Now you're afraid, now you're doubting yourself, so now you want to do more so that you might get a ticket to go to heaven. So that you feel good about that you are a Christian. But when you go down this path, you will get depressed because we will fail. And when we fail one of those laws or the rules that we have, we fail all of them. And each time we fail them, we beat ourselves up. We begin to doubt if we are a Christian. And maybe that doubting might end up us losing our faith. Here's what that is saying. Do to be. We need to do to be a Christian. Hopefully you're making that connection. Does that sound familiar? But then Jesus said, I fulfilled everything, just be. And Paul said, clothe yourself with Jesus Christ. If there's one thing that you take away this morning, take this with you. Be to do. Be a Christian so you can live a Christian life. You are already a believer because God declared you as a Christian. The Spirit lives in you. Christ lives in you. Just be. Be to do. This is your faith walk. Love others. Love your neighbors. Love your friends. Love your family. Love your non-Christian friends. This is the one commandment Christ gave us. Love others. You are already a Christian. Now be a good Christian. Love others. I keep saying it wrong. Love God. Love others. Now what? Paul talks about a different emotion in the love that we give others. It's in Romans 13:8. Let me read it for us. Owe nothing to anyone except your obligation to love them. If you love your neighbor, you will fulfill the requirements of God's law. Let me say it again. You will fulfill the requirements of God's law. Wow. That's a mic drop. I was telling Kay I'm going to say that. That's a mic drop, isn't it? Love another person with the feeling that you are in debt to them. Like you owe them your love. The next time you see someone, think about that. Show care, show love to them like it is your duty. Like it is owed to them. Be to do. Love God. Love others. Now what? Let me close with this for this morning. So we all know the Exodus story. This is the story of Moses and the Israelites. The question I want to ask you this morning is, what was the problem for the Israelites? Think about that. What was their problem? Some would say they disobeyed God, but wait. They didn't get the 10 Commandments until Mount Sinai. So how could they have disobeyed God? What was their problem? Their problem was they were in slavery to Pharaoh for over 400 years. And the Israelites were God's chosen people. They didn't do anything to be God's chosen people. He called them. He could have called other nations, but he called the Israelites to be his people. And the story goes, God sends Moses as a messenger to go and free the Israelites from Egypt. And the only thing the Israelites had to do was follow God and Moses out of Egypt for their freedom. Respond to the freedom God gave them. Put their faith in God. Just believe. And so they did. And they were freed. Nothing they do to be freedom. It was all done by God. Just be. Be the chosen people of God. And then as they left Egypt, they helped each other along to freedom. You and I today, we are all slaves to this part of us that wants to do wrong, that is against God. This part of us that doesn't show love to some. And Jesus is the messenger. He came to free us. He came to give us freedom. Live in freedom. God called you and me here this morning to his church, his chosen people. Just believe in Jesus. Put your faith in Jesus. Hold yourself with Jesus. He already did everything for you. And there's nothing for you to do for your freedom. Just be. Be to do. Love God. Love others. Now what? Go this week and love all those that God put near you. Love your neighbors. Love your friends. Love your family. Love the non-Christians. Love the person sitting next to you, in front of you, behind you. Love your church. And this is how you become a good Christian. E te ape te van jitsu tanki na okomon choka. Haka chine putsuke ka shala choka.